They may only be 3-3, but after a big win over the Detroit Lions, the Kansas City Chiefs offense is back. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, The Legacy, Louis DiBiase. On today's show, we are going to recap a great Week 6 in the NFL that saw a couple of teams go down to the gutter, a couple of teams that can't be stopped, and of course, we'll start with this Kansas City Chiefs offense that got things back on track. Do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen. Reminder, you can follow our show and hear new episodes ad-free daily on Amazon Music. Go check that out. And thank you again for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our favorite players, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward moment of the week. It's Mazda, move and be moved. Louis, we got an incredible matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions, and I thought the game absolutely delivered. But the big story for me is the Chiefs' offense getting things back on track. We have been asking for a few years now for the Chiefs to have that explosive element back to their offense, and they may only be 3-3 on the year, but it seems like that is truly coming back for them right now.
And Tyler, it's only going to get more explosive because Rashee Rice is back next week. They had to just get to 500 through this first 6-game stretch, and I think they were going to be fine, and that's exactly what they've done because Patrick Mahomes is back to an MVP form. His last 4 games, he has over 1,000 passing yards, 11 total touchdowns, and just 1 interception. His mobility has been huge. He's been playing safe but aggressive football. Patrick Mahomes was my MVP pick for this year. Yours was Baker Mayfield. They're both looking really good right now. I know they're only 3-3, but the Chiefs are back, and they're still a top 2 team in this conference.
100%, and I think regardless of the record, you look at the way that they're performing right now, they have a real shot to, get back to the Super Bowl and maybe even win it. They probably look more impressive right now, even though their record's 3-3, than they did at times last year, even though they went 15-2, and that's something my guy Ryan Tracy from Locked On Chiefs talked about.
The Kansas City Chiefs dial up the juice and survive the Detroit Lions in that offense to get themselves back to 500 and a little bit off of the microscope that they've been under for quite a long time. I'm Ryan from Locked On Chiefs. Join us for all the details there, but you have to give them credit. They brought a new type of energy, from Isaiah Pacheco to Xavier Worthy, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce starting to look like their old selves. They brought a lot to the table. Fans should be frustrated at times with the kicking game. Special teams is still a question mark, but they're making progress, and they can get that sorted out as long as the offense continues to give Patrick Mahomes the time that he needs, despite not having Josh Simmons. That is a long way to go. Kudos to Jalen Moore, who was the standout in this game, who was able to step in on a day's notice and protect the backside of QB1. The Chiefs have a chance to pull above 500 and get back with the rest of the AFC West. That's coming this week on Locked On Chiefs.
Very curious to see how the Chiefs handle the next couple of games. I mean, they play the Raiders next week. That should be a win. The Commanders at home should be a great game. It's in prime time, but I think the Chiefs will be favored in that game. But then they got to go to Buffalo in the first week of November. They play Denver 2 weeks after that, after their bye. They host the Colts after that. I mean, that's a tough next 5 games in the overall. Curious to see if they can keep this going. But if they come out of those 5, 4-1 or 5-0, this team really will be rolling.
Yeah, and they need it too, because when you look at the AFC West right now, I mean, the Chargers got a really important win today against the Miami Dolphins. The Denver Broncos look like the best defense in the NFL. So while I still think the Chiefs are the team to beat in that division and maybe still in the conference, them in Buffalo, like they have a lot of competition in their own division. So they had a rocky start to the year at 3-3. But with the injuries now, I think settling down, they're getting all their weapons back. Like, they're now really deep, surprisingly, at wide receiver on paper. I think Hollywood Brown's going to end up being one of the best wide receiver threes in football. Now I think the excuses, they're not going to be there as much. And this is when Kansas City, even with the schedule getting a little bit tougher as you laid out, this is when they need to go on a bit of a run. The good thing is again, they look like they have maybe the best quarterback in football again.
100%. And look, we focus on the weapons, but I think what might have been most impressive to me in this game is they beat the Lions at their own game. They were the more physical football team. They won in the trenches in this game, and that's something that my guy Matt Derry from Locked On Lions pointed out as a big disappointment, along with some extracurriculars after the whistle that will probably get one of the Lions' best players suspended or at least a pretty hefty fine.
Not a good night for the Detroit Lions, to say the least. They get bullied by the Kansas City Chiefs, getting beat at their own game. Way too physical. Was Kansas City Chiefs win 30-17. Story of this game, and I know a lot of fans are going to say it was penalties and lack of penalties and the refs, and the Chiefs didn't commit a single penalty, and they didn't. But let me tell you something. The Lions got pushed around tonight. Rarely do you see this from a Lions team, and it's okay. They're allowed to lose a game or two here. They're now 4-2. They're still in good shape. But the secondary was outmanned tonight. Branch and Kirby Joseph were not 100%, and Kansas City feasted on a lot of missed tackles, and they get the win 30-17. Bush League at the end of this game, by the way, by Brian Branch punching Juju Smith-Schuster after the game was over. More coming up on Locked On Lions.
And Juju was going to the locker room covering his nose and stuff. It being on prime time always kind of elevates thing. I would actually be surprised if Branch didn't get a suspension, but I mean, regardless of that, I'm not worried about the Lions. I'm with Matt here. They lost a game against another team that's really good on the road, prime time. I don't think there's any reason to have any overall declarations about the Lions other than they lost a game against a good team.
Yeah, I wouldn't make any grand conclusions about this game for the Lions. I'm more impressed about the win for the Chiefs than I'm disappointed in a loss for the Detroit Lions. I still think they're a top 4 team in a loaded NFC right now. And yeah, the Chiefs just, I don't want to say they wanted it more. I hate that cliche, but they really needed this win more. And it was, again, primetime football at home. It was kind of a must-have game for Kansas City. And normally, over the last decade, like, they get those wins.
Yeah, they typically will pull those out, and seeing them do it kind of does inspire the confidence. Now, you mentioned, the NFC is absolutely loaded, and one of the best teams in the NFC right now that just simply cannot be stopped is Baker Mayfield's Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And strangely enough, the Detroit Lions take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next week. That's probably going to be the best game of Week 7. But speaking of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, again, they just cannot be stopped, and Baker Mayfield is the MVP favorite in the NFL. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Mizzen and Main. You know the saying, look good, feel good? The problem is that most dress clothes only check one of those boxes. They look sharp, yeah, but they feel stiff, hot, and high maintenance. That's why there's Mizzen and Main. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel comfortable. They actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and they've perfected it ever since. Mizzen and Main feels so good, and you look good, you feel good, all of that. You don't got to worry about changing clothes. You can go from the office to dinner, even out on the golf course, and still feel comfortable and look your best all day long. It's the feel of athletic wear, but with the look of professional menswear. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com with the promo code LOCKEDONNFL20. That's Mizzen, M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Main, M-A-I-N.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL20 for 20% off. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select states. Today's episode is also brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward Moment of the Week. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. And there are moments that do more than put points up on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep the game moving forward. And this week, we're getting ready to talk about it. I'm going with Baker Mayfield, who continues to move his team forward. The Bucs got a big win against the San Francisco 49ers. Baker threw for 256, had 2 touchdowns on the day, ran for a couple of yards in there, and just overall led his team and moved the game forward. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. It's Mazda. Move and be moved. All right, Louis, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL, breaking down Week 6 in the NFL. It was a great week. We got some great games, and I thought it was a big week for separating teams that are going to be the best teams and teams that are clearly going to be the worst teams. And we'll talk about some of the worst teams to end today's show, but we got to start with a lot of teams that kept only one loss in the L column, and that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And look, I know the 49ers are dealing with injuries and all of that, but the 49ers are always ready to play, as we saw last week against the Los Angeles Rams. They were ready to play in this game as well. It was very tight, and only 3 points scored in the fourth quarter, but the Buccaneers were able to separate themselves in the second half here and get a 30-19 win. Man, I don't know what it's going to take. Emeka Egbuka got hurt in this game. Obviously, they're still missing Mike Evans. They're still missing Chris Godwin. But Tez Johnson gets a 45-yard touchdown catch. And Cameron Johnson all of a sudden leads them with 4 catches and 64 yards. It really doesn't matter who you put out there right now. Baker Mayfield is going to lead the team to a win. He's proven it 6 straight weeks in a row now.
Yeah, and obviously the 49ers are going through like a historic amount of injuries. Like I've never seen,
and it got worse.
Even as an Eagles analyst. Yeah, I saw something similar in 2018 and 2019, but nothing to this level where they now lost Fred Warner. It's unbelievable. But Tampa Bay, as you mentioned, like they were banged up too. They were down their top 4 receivers at one point in this football game. They were heading into the game already without Bucky Irving at running back. This was, like, for you, I mean, props. I mean, what a call. Baker Mayfield, this was kind of his, at least through the first quarter and a half of the season, this was like an MVP performance where it's truly, in its purest definition, a quarterback elevating a tough situation around him to beat a good football team. And it was a battle of 2 top teams in the NFC. I don't know if San Francisco will be able to, tread water enough to battle for the 1 seed at the end. But right now, like for seeding, that's a really important win for the Buccaneers, who now have the best record in the conference. So yeah, I have to eat crow on Baker Mayfield. I thought he was a good, not great quarterback for years, but he looks like he's a great to special MVP candidate at this point. I mean, what a performance.
Well, through 6 weeks, I'll take my credit for what looks like at minimum a good call on Baker Mayfield with MVP. But I'm right with you. I have said, hey, Baker's not going to elevate his teammates. He's kind of a tier 2 quarterback who you build a good enough team around him. He could probably win, but is he going to elevate people and be? I think he has elevated that team. I think you're right. Looking at what he's dealt with, the injuries on offense, and everybody is so inspired by just his demeanor. And I love what he said in the press conference this week of when he was young and he wasn't winning, he was immature, he was brash, he was cocky, he was arrogant. And now he's a dog and he's a leader. And he's like, I've been the same guy all along. It's just, if you're winning, people like you. If you're not, people don't. And I think that's a good lesson of like, just be yourself and to heck with what anybody has to say about it. You know what I mean? So I just love that attitude. And I think he really does inspire his teammates in the locker room. But do want to move to the AFC, where another team in the Indianapolis Colts just continue to win. And this one wasn't as pretty as 40-6. It looked like they were going to lose to the Jacoby Brissett Arizona Cardinals for a minute. But even when Daniel Jones doesn't play the best game possible, even when Jonathan Taylor is kind of hemmed up in the first half, they still find a way to win. And that's something my guy Jake Arthur from Locked On Colts talked about. They're just finding ways to win no matter the situation.
It was a weird one from the jump today. You know, Anthony Richardson and Charvarius Ward both injured during pregame warmups, out for the game. Shane Steichen said he kind of had to rally the troops and get everyone refocused heading into the game because they had a job to do. Daniel Jones, kind of led a few nice touchdown drives there. Tyler Warren and Josh Downs were instrumental in this one on offense as to, getting open, creating yards after catch. They both scored touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor with yet another 100-yard game, of course. kind of taking over a little bit in the second half. The defense did not have its best day. But again, your Colts are 5-1. They've pretty much won every which way that you can so far this season. So it's a battle-tested team, and it's only going to get more interesting from here.
And listen, he's right. It was a weird start, bizarre start for the Colts. Anthony Richardson snaps a training band in the locker room, fractures his orbital bone, has to be in the hospital during the game. More importantly, your number one cornerback, Charvarius Ward. Jake needs to be careful out there on the field. Charvarius Ward got blasted by a tight end during warmups and re-aggravated a concussion he had earlier in the year. And the Colts still go out there, find a way to win. Like, we're to the point now where you just have to buy into the Colts. They're a legit team, and I don't know that I trust Daniel Jones to take them to the Super Bowl, but I think it's much more possible that they win a playoff game or something like that than I did a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, again, and I said this on the show last week, and I've continued to say it. I still don't believe, until I see like a really high-quality win against a true contender, like Denver beating the Eagles last week. That made me really buy into Denver this year. Until they get that kind of win, I'm still going to say they're more of a wild card division, like weak division winner in this kind of conference, more than a Super Bowl contender. I still will believe that, but I will say Indianapolis' roster is really good. And Daniel Jones, like, even as he was mentioning, even in the games where he's not incredible, he's still putting up over 230 yards from scrimmage and 3 touchdowns. Like, his floor games this year are really impressive. There's no catastrophic bad performances like he had in New York. So if this is the floor and there is a ceiling, I think Indianapolis could be more than what I suspect they are at this moment. And the schedule, I mean, it is what it is. So it's not like it's going to get much harder. So
that's kind of the problem with wanting to see the prove it win.
Right. I don't think you're good until the playoffs. So
I think they only have one game on their schedule that would even qualify as that. They play at the Chargers next week, and the Chargers are an okay team. They almost lost to the Dolphins today, so I can't count that. The Titans, by God, we know that that's not it. The Steelers, who we're getting ready to talk about, good football team, but I don't know about the Steelers other than the Falcons. Then they play at the Chiefs the week of Thanksgiving, and then Texans, Jags, Seahawks, 49ers, Jags, Texans. I mean, that Chiefs game in Kansas City, if the Colts win that, people are going to start to go crazy, and rightfully so at that point, but they may finish. The Colts really are setting up to be this year's Vikings. They're probably going to be 14-3 or 15-2. Like, they're in a great spot to do so.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, because I've compared them to last year's Denver Broncos a lot on this show, but I do feel like that's probably more right because their record is going to be, I mean, they're already 5-1. They're tied with the Bills for the best win percentage in the conference at this point. And if the Bills lose tomorrow against Atlanta, which I'm not predicting, but if that happens, Indy's the 1 seed in the AFC. So it does feel much more like Minnesota last year. And Daniel Jones is having that Sam Darnold-like resurgence, which is, I really did not see that coming. I mean, Shane Steichen, Coach of the Year favorite right now at this point? Or, I mean, it's him and Kyle Shanahan, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it would have to be Steichen at this point because of the reclamation project of Daniel Jones. But again, there's another team in there that only has one loss on the season and continues to win, and it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. And no matter how ugly or how little we believe it, they keep on winning. And my guy Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers talked about the W they got over the Cleveland Browns.
Hey everyone, Chris Carter here from the Locked On Steelers podcast, giving you your post-game reaction to the Steelers' 23-9 win over the Cleveland Browns. It was a dominant performance in the trenches from the Steelers as they sacked Dylan Gabriel 6 times, Nick Herbie getting 2, Jalen Ramsey getting 2, and then of course TJ Watt and Alex Hines teaming up as well for half a sack each. But meanwhile on the other side, the Steelers pretty much controlled the line of scrimmage as well with their offensive line against one of the best defensive lines in football. Myles Garrett held to just 2 assisted tackles, no tackles for loss, a single pressure, no sacks. He was dominated all game by the Steelers' game plan as they contained him throughout the game. Also, the Steelers' run game went off. They got over 100 yards on the Browns and largely moved the ball at will when they wanted to in the third quarter where they had back-to-back touchdown drives. The Steelers' offense, with Broderick Jones on the line, Jalen Warren in the backfield, had a pretty strong day.
I mean, I know it's just the Browns, But the Browns do have a very good defensive front, and they've caused a lot of problems for other people. One of the big question marks that I had about the Steelers throughout the year is that offensive line. Can they run the ball when they need to? So I think some of the things that we are seeing from the Steelers are encouraging, and I think that they could be somebody that surprises someone week one of the playoffs. But I still don't see the Steelers as a true Super Bowl contender regardless of their record.
No, and I'm starting to buy in a little bit more where I think they're better than last year's team led by Russell Wilson. In this conference, it is kind of wide open with that good defense, and Rodgers is much more steady than Russell in the quarterbacks they've had in the past. Like today, 21 of 30, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns. Had some vintage Rodgers moments. He's not going to have that for 4 quarters every single week, but he's still talented enough where he can have some elite moments. And that enough in the AFC will make them competitive, especially in a bad division that they're all kind of running away with at this point. But kind of like Indianapolis, if they run into Kansas City or Buffalo down the road in the playoffs, I still don't think they're on that tier. But I've been kind of saying all year that they're going to be no different with Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, and I think I'm starting to pull back on that. They're clearly a better team than last year.
Yeah, I think they are a better team, and what it would really come down to, in my opinion, is will their stars make huge plays in big moments. Jalen Ramsey had a funny quote after the game. He said, I can't wait to tell my kids that I played in the game with TJ Watt and Myles Garrett, and I had 2 sacks. I thought that was pretty hilarious. But Jalen Ramsey, in that star role for them, has been impactful. He's made big-time plays to win them games. No,
for sure. That was a great move this offseason that I kind of stuck my nose up at a little bit. No, I didn't like it at all. But Ramsey in this role, it really works. And I think as he's aged, this is I think he's adapted really well in the NFL. And a lot of corners, especially with that kind of mentality, wouldn't be willing to adjust, but he really has, and he's kind of had a resurgence in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's somebody slipping my mind, but he's probably been the best defensive back in the NFL, like overall in the NFL for over the last decade. From being a lockdown corner to the star role in Los Angeles to what he's doing now is kind of a physical chess piece. Got to give him a lot of credit for adapting and continuing to have a high level of play at all times. But speaking of a high level of play, there's a couple of teams out there who have not experienced a high level of play, and specifically the Miami Dolphins. And with some of the quotes coming out of Miami after that loss to the Chargers, I think this might be the end of Mike McDaniel. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. You need parts for a project fast? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Their part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on the job where every detail matters. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel, whether it's player props, money lines, spreads, over-unders. Putting all that stuff together for a same-game parlay, it makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Once again, that's FanDuel.com. All right, Louie, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL, recapping Week 6. And we saw some excellent football games like the Chiefs beating the Lions. We saw some excellent football teams like the teams that we just talked about with only one loss on the year. But there's a lot of teams out there that are playing terrible, and I think their coaches are in a very tough spot. And we start with the Miami Dolphins, who lost again to the Los Angeles Chargers, this time 29-27 with a last-second field goal. Justin Herbert made just an incredible play, gets away from pressure, hits it to Ladd McConkey, who makes a man miss, gets up the field for 40 yards, sets up a win. But, boy, from the Dolphins' perspective, they are just in a world of hurt. And my guy Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins talked about that.
The Miami Dolphins are now 1-5 on the season after falling to the Los Angeles Chargers in Week 6 by a final score of 29-27, and it proves that bad teams continue to find increasingly more creative ways to lose football games. The Dolphins were non-existent on offense for much of the second half of this football game after leading at halftime, but put together 2 touchdown drives in the fourth quarter to take a 1-point lead with less than 1 minute left. And that is, of course, before Justin Herbert is in the grasp of Jalen Phillips, who fails to make the tackle, and a big long catch and run by Ladd McConkey sets up a game-winning field goal by the Chargers. The Dolphins don't have a lot of attention to detail right now, and it continues to cost them in close games.
Now, after the game, things got really bad, where Tua said that they got guys late to player-led meetings, guys not showing up to player meetings. I don't know if that's the type of stuff that you should be saying out loud, but what it tells me is the leaders on this team don't have any control over their locker room, which means the coach lost the locker room a long time ago. I would not be shocked if the people listening to this podcast right now on Monday morning are listening to it with Mike McDaniel already fired.
It's also kind of ironic that Tua is criticizing the leadership of the locker room while showing off bad leadership by calling out players publicly after you just threw it 3 interceptions in a game that they lost, and it was a lot on you as the quarterback. So, yes. I don't know. Tua, I feel like, has been doing this a lot this year, and I just don't think there's a lot of accountability on his end. And he's the one that got that big contract. He's the one as the quarterback that's supposed to stabilize a tough situation, and he has not been able to do that. He is turning the ball over at will in 2025. So I kind of rolled my eyes at that statement. But yeah, McDaniel's definitely in trouble. Not a great look. And for teams out there, though, that are interested in some Miami talent on defense before the trade deadline, this is probably good news for you because they do have some interesting pieces that they might be willing to move now to a playoff team.
Yeah, I think Jalen Waddle, maybe someone on their defensive line could be
like
an option
Bradley
for
Chubb.
them.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. You know, I'm kind of with you on Tua. I've been kind of caught off guard by some of his comments. He doesn't really seem like he's got a lot of self-awareness right now. Like when Cam Newton is criticizing you and you go with the, well, why don't you get out here and do it? Well, it's Cam Newton. He's a former MVP. Like, what are we talking about here? He's better than you could ever dream of being at football. Right. He has actually done it. It was at that moment where I was like, man, somebody needs to get with Tua and say, like, man, maybe just say I need to play better. Maybe that's the route that we need to go. But, yeah, I brought this up because I think that Mike McDaniel is probably going to get fired. I think once you start seeing stuff like this happen, but he might not be alone. I'm telling you, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep asking for it because the Tennessee Titans are an absolute disgrace, too. They made the Las Vegas Raiders look like a playoff team after the Raiders had been drubbed and gave up 40 points multiple times over the last few weeks. They only are able to score 10. One of them's a garbage time touchdown. I don't know that it's going to happen, but Brian Callahan is maybe the worst coach in the history of the NFL. You look at the win percentages, you look at things like that, and, you know, I'm somebody who thought the Titans needed to move on from Mike Vrabel, and they needed a clean start. But Mike Vrabel has more wins this season with the New England Patriots than Brian Callahan has had in 2.5 seasons with the Titans. And now Mike Vrabel is coming back to Tennessee with his 4-2 Patriots team led by Drake May, who might be in the MVP conversation. And the Patriots are going to wreck the Titans by 30. So I think it would make more sense for the Titans to do it now. It would be less embarrassing than to do it after Mike Vrabel whoops them next week. But Mike McDaniel and Brian Callahan, as me and Michelle talked about on Thursday's show last week, they are just in a a dead sprint race to be the first head coach fired this year.
And it's just such a tough look because I feel like you should have did this before taking a quarterback with the first overall pick.
Yes.
I mean, that's such a fragile, you want that first overall quarterback to have a good support system from the jump. And to me, like, that's so important. So yeah, I mean, you can really tell that some of these organizations just don't know how to be consistent winners based on the decisions they make. And I think there's a lot of teams across this league. You look at the top of management and the top of their organizations, like they make some head scratching calls pretty consistently.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the Titans traded away a good, solid young corner in Jarvis Brownlee Jr. for a 6th-round pick when he was obviously playing higher than his 5th-round selection from 2023. And you know who he traded him to? The New York Jets. Speaking of a team, we're talking about two teams that are in the gutter. Somehow the Jets are even worse. And my guy John Butchko from Locked On Jets talked about that disappointing loss in London.
I'm here from Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London, where the Jets just lost to the Broncos. When you're the worst team in the NFL, you find a new way to lose every week. The Jets' defense, which has been an issue all season long, came to play. They allowed only 13 points. They forced their first turnover of the season on the first Denver drive, and they allowed only a field goal in the second half, but it wasn't enough because of a dismal offensive performance by the Jets. Jets end this game with negative passing yards, a terrible performance by Justin Fields, wasting a stellar defensive performance. The job of the coaching staff has to be questioned in this one as well. Aaron Glenn, what was he doing before halftime? The Jets allowed the clock to run out instead of going after points. It proved to be costly. There's a reason the team's 0-6. It's because they always find a way to lose, and that's true of this Jets team. For more on the Jets, tune into the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And this is the problem. When you have a defensive-minded head coach, even if he wants to be a CEO type and not call plays, you always are looking behind you at what the offense is doing, looking over your shoulder at the offense and the offensive coaching. You know, I don't think Justin Fields is the guy. I know that you're a Justin Fields believer, but I can't even say with certainty that Justin Fields isn't the guy because I think the coaching on offense is so bad with the Jets. And let me say this, when you're Aaron Glenn and you say, I'm not going to call the defensive plays, I'm not going to call offensive plays, I'm going to manage the team, and you still have a debacle like they had at the end of the first half there where you just waste all the time. I mean, Garrett Wilson is freaking out on the sideline. Like, what? And then after the game, they said, well, he said, I was so frustrated because I didn't know what the plan was, and once they told me what the plan was, I was disappointed. Like, it's crazy to me how these high-level NFL head coaches who are getting paid so much money to be head coaches can botch these simple things. And usually it's, you know, you're worried about play calling because you're a play calling head coach. But when you're not a play calling head coach, how do you botch these in-game management things so bad?
Because this is all you're doing during the game. If you can't manage the game well, what else are you contributing? Yeah,
that's
what
would you say you do here.
Right, you know? Exactly. I think that was honestly one of the worst poorly managed games from a head coach I've ever seen, and especially from a defensive-minded coach. Like, the level of conservative identity that the Jets are establishing this year is truly unbelievable. I mean, I've watched a lot of Jets football this year because, as you said, like, I was a Justin Fields believer this year. I even picked the Jets to be the 7th seed and compete for the playoffs this year. The amount of times I've seen moments like that at the end of the first half, that wasn't a one-off. Like, this has been a consistent thing all year. Aaron Glenn, like, I already would consider moving on. It's one of the worst managed starts to a season I've ever seen, even from a team that's not very good like the New York Jets.
100%. I mean, they're in a tough spot. If they don't win a game, I think they're going to have to move on, and that's a sad fact. But if you can't manage the game properly and that's all you're doing, then what are you doing at the end of the day? But as we always do, a little quick rundown of all the other games that we didn't happen to touch on. The Patriots win 25-19 over the Saints. Drake May looks excellent once again in that one. The Panthers come back and get a big win over the Cowboys, 30-27. That offense seems to be humming. The Seahawks win over Jacksonville in Jacksonville, tamping down the excitement of the Jags. Monday Night Football win 20-12. The Rams just kind of manhandle the lowly Baltimore Ravens 17-3, and then the Green Bay Packers win 27-18 over the Joe Flacco-led Bengals. Any of those games stand out to you?
Yeah, for me, I'm totally believing in the Seattle Seahawks. I picked them to make the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years and kind of got burned for it. So I cooled down this year. I didn't think Darnold in a new system with maybe a bad offensive line without Kevin O'Connell would do what he did last year, but I'm going to eat crow on that. Seattle looks like a legit team in the NFC, and that was a good quality win against the Jaguars. They have a really good defense, and Sam Darnold had 295 passing yards today and 2 touchdowns. JSN looks like a top 3 receiver. Totally buying into Seattle.
Yeah, great post by Seattle's media team. They took the Jacksonville sign and put Jackson with the X, like Jackson Smith and Jigba. That was great. Yeah, he's absolutely excellent. I think that game right there, Louis, shows the difference in quality of the AFC and the NFC.
For sure.
Both teams are 4-2. But they're different quality.
Yeah, like that second tier of each conference, clearly the NFC's second tier is so much better. Yeah.
100%. The last one that I want to mention is that Patriots win. And I know that they didn't win by a ton over the Saints. They won by 6. But boy, Drake May just looks excellent, man. He looks like he's got a real shot to be great. But with that being said, that is our recap of Week 6, the Sunday at least, Week 6 of the NFL. Great Monday Night Football games coming up, doubleheader. I'll be here to break that down with not Lauren Cox because he's got his own game to worry about there. But I'll have somebody here, or we'll just do a little solo mission as I've been known to do from time to time. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Legacy, Louis DiBiase. As we tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.